I want to open a new account and they say your board member should come to the bank. And you're wondering who should pay for the board members coming to Nigeria to sign a tiny form for you, and there were so many things. So many of our many of NPOs in other parts of the country, they couldn't even open accounts. And the problems with the financial institutions, it wasn't shifting. The reforms that the country had done, we realized that the regulatory authorities, which is like the special control unit, they've done their part, the legislature has done their part, but the private sector were still in the old mode. And we realized that we needed to take certain steps to shift the needle. That was what informed the setting up of the multi-stakeholder working group of charities, which is now a platform where we now brought the private sector into the dialogue, because all along we've been dialoguing and reforming. It was just the CSOs and the regulators, but they were not part of the conversation. So it was now at the end that we now started providing that information. Oh, Nigeria has conducted a risk assessment, which now has identified the NPOs at risk, because all of them were, the default setting was that all financial institutions treated NPOs as high-risk customers. And once you are designated as a high-risk customer, they will apply all of those onerous measures on you, and that was what was responsible for that enhanced scrutiny, all of the difficulties and shocks and stresses we were experiencing. And we were so shocked to learn from the interactions that, number one, they were not even aware that Nigerians conducted a risk assessment. Number two, they were not also aware of the risk segregation and risk categorizations that have happened. And number three, they were not even aware of the new reforms, the regulatory measures that have been put in place after the risk assessment to mitigate risk in the NPO sector. So that was a platform that enabled us to start thinking together and sharing information, and that is why we're here now.
So this is just to emphasize the point that government alone cannot actually successfully build and sustain reforms without the involvement of all stakeholders or the private sector, to be very specific. Risk assessment for the non-profit organization sectors. Certain vulnerabilities became very, very evident. And one of such was that there was heavy use and movement of cash by NPOs operating especially in the Northeast at the time. And so these were all captured in the report. So after the report, expectedly, we were supposed to engage all stakeholders across, disseminating the findings of the report to law enforcement, to other regulators, to the NPO sector, and the general public. So this multi-stakeholder working group platform was actually a dream that, yes, Victoria conceived and SCUMUL helped to birth that dream. And so at the onset, we gave her the full support, because we know that through this platform, we'll be able to engage the private sector more. And the primary objective for us was to enlighten these private sectors, especially the financial institutions, about the new risk level that, flowing from the National Risk Assessment, we now have what we call the FATF NPOs. We also have what we call the at-risk NPOs, which is based on their activities and their characteristics. And also to reinforce the fact that, the working group that we constituted for the NPO risk assessment actually had a representative from the Central Bank of Nigeria. And to that extent, the banks were also fully part of the NPO risk assessment, because about 16 banks actually filled and submitted the questionnaire. So this platform is actually to enable us as regulators to push the narrative, and also to tell them that the old narrative can no longer be sustained.